Here's a hot take. That hidden gem you found through an influencer wasn't hidden. In fact, it's most likely swamped with tourists as we speak. It was never yours to discover in the first place. Somebody with a camera already found it, showed it to a few 100,000 people, and you just happened to be one of them. The real hidden gem is still hidden. It's the thing a local mentioned to you once, offhanded with no photos to prove it, and you almost didn't believe it was worth going to because nobody else had posted about it. Then, if you're lucky and the local trusted you enough, they brought you to the place and asked for you to not take any photos or to share about it online. We've been talking about hidden gems all backwards. We're going to change that today. My name is Kiara, and this is Put the Guidebook Down. Here's the thing nobody says out loud about influencer travel content. It's not that it's fake or that the places aren't real or that the food isn't good. It's that by the time it reaches you, the original version of the content has already been edited, fed through AI, and layered with multiple filters on top of it. So much that it sometimes doesn't even resemble the original location. It's also been seen by everyone else who follows that account and the account after that reposted it, and the algorithm that pushed it to a few million more people who all had the same reaction at the same time. So when you find a spot through an influencer, you're not discovering anything. You're just joining a line that's already been really long. You just can't see the rest of the line from where you're standing until you arrive at that spot that you paid thousands of dollars to reach, only to be very disappointed. Meanwhile, a local telling you about a place with zero polish and zero proof feels like the weaker recommendation. It also might seem like a red flag, and you may worry about safety. Why? Because there are no photos. There are no thousands of likes backing it up. There are no influencers talking about it. Just some random person saying, you should go here, trust me. And we've been trained to trust the version with more social proof over the version with more actual truth in it. That's backwards. And there's real research on why we keep getting this backwards. Starting with the parasocial interaction theory, which essentially explains why we trust an influencer like a friend, even though we've never met them. This concept goes back to 1956. Way before social media even existed, from researchers Donald Horton and Richard Wohl. They were studying television and radio personalities, and they noticed something strange. Audiences were forming what felt like real personal relationships with people who had no idea that they existed, or they were even forming relationships with fictional characters. They called it a parasocial relationship. One-sided, but it doesn't feel one-sided to the person having it. Travel research has picked this exact concept back up recently, and it turns out it's one of the biggest reasons influencer recommendations hit differently than they should. Followers genuinely perceive influencers as digital friends, and that perceived friendship is a huge part of why their recommendations carry so much weight. And this is why more businesses are recently investing in UGC or user-generated content. It's not really about whether the influencer is credible, which in some cases that is why the investment occurs. It's that the relationship feels personal. So the recommendation gets filed under advice from someone I trust instead of content I was shown. And that's then amplified and supported by the influencer's personal network that all believes to have a relationship with them. That's the first piece of why this gets backwards. We're not weighing the locals' tips and the influencer's tips on the same scale. The influencer gets an emotional head start because of the parasocial relationship, even though we've genuinely never met them and they have no idea that we exist. The next framework is really information cascades. Why everyone somehow ends up at the exact same spots. And I'm definitely going to struggle pronouncing their names, so I apologize in advance. But this second concept comes from economics, developed by researchers Bichandi, Hirschleifer, and Welch. It's called an information cascade, and the core idea is this. Once enough people make this same choice, other people start copying that choice instead of using their own judgment because it feels safer to assume the crowd knows something you don't. And here's why it matters specifically for travel. The first 100 people who visit a spot might be going because they genuinely think it's worth it. But the 10,000th person isn't really evaluating the spot on its own merits anymore. They're mostly reacting to the fact that 10,000 other people already went. And at that point, the recommendation isn't about information anymore. It's just momentum. It's about comparing that if what they're seeing is truly what that recommendation was from the beginning. Even add a further element of travel FOMO, which drives a lot of people to add different spots onto their travel itineraries so they're not missing out on what the world of strangers and foreigners are saying is a must-see. But why are we even giving these strangers all of this credit and influence over our decisions in the first place? Shouldn't we be more concerned about the local opinion? After all, they're the ones who live there. This is what actually explains why every trip on your feed starts looking the same. It's not that everyone has identical taste. It's that everyone's individual judgment gets quietly replaced by crowd following, one person at a time, until the whole feed is just cascade after cascade of the same information. This isn't new because we've been using guidebooks and travel guides for decades to help with trip planning. The difference is the large availability of information and amplification through social media and now AI. Rather than creating unique content, many influencers are just re-amplifying content that they already saw perform well on another's channel to get favored by the algorithm. I'm just calling it as it is, which leads into our third framework and kind of counters this second of information cascading, the strength of weak ties, why one local's tip is worth more than a million view posts. The third concept is the one that actually flips the whole story. It comes from sociologist Mark Granovetter from 1973. And it's called the strength of weak ties. Granovetter's original finding was about job hunting. People assume their closest friends and family would be the best source of new opportunities. Instead, it was casual acquaintances, weak ties, who delivered the real leads. Why? It's because your close circle already shares most of your information. You've probably heard everything they know, and they already know everything about you. A weak tie sits outside of your circle, so whatever they tell you is more likely to be something genuinely new. If you've ever used LinkedIn or tech tools with the In My Network feature, this is the concept behind it. Now, apply that here, and it reframes the whole comparison. An influencer recommendation might reach 1 million people, but the information itself is maximally redundant. Everyone gets the identical tip at the same time. A local telling you one thing quietly with no camera involved is structurally the opposite. Low reach, but genuinely non-redundant. It hasn't been filtered through a cascade. It hasn't been flattened into content. It might be the only time that specific piece of information has been heard by a foreigner or shared externally with someone outside of the community. So the local isn't the weaker source because they have no followers. They're actually the stronger source for that exact reason. Or when talking about media, misinformation, disinformation, they are the trusted source. From my personal experience, I had heard about the painted monasteries of Bukovina from several of my local friends in Moldova and through different conversations with Romanians while traveling through Romania. At that time, these monasteries were mostly visited by local tourists from the Balkan region, with very few foreign visitors, despite these monasteries being a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There just wasn't a lot of content out there about them and how to visit them. There was also little to no influencer-generated content about them, so most who visited them heard about them through the grapevine or took the time to do their research of the area to plan their trip. And that was how I originally discovered them and convinced my friends and I to plan a trip. However, today they've become part of the information cascade. Viator, TripAdvisor has begun to add the day trips to the monasteries from Chisinau and Bucharest on their websites. As a result, influencers have been traveling to these places more and more, bringing noise to this once quiet and respected area with floods of tourists through their network of followers. This is a story of more and more local spots entering the spotlight. Now, when you put the three frameworks together, here's the full shape of what's actually happening. Parasocial trust makes the influencer's tips feel more personal, even though they aren't. Information cascades make a crowded spot feel validated, even though the crowd stopped thinking for itself around visit number 200. And the strength of weak ties explains why the least proven recommendation in the room by our today's standards of social proof, and the locals is often the one carrying anything new. So here's the uncomfortable part. Find hidden gems is genuinely good travel advice. But by the time most people act on it, they're doing it through exactly the mechanism that makes hidden gems stop being hidden. You ask an influencer, AI, or an algorithm trained on influencer content to show you something undiscovered. And the moment they show it to you, it's been discovered by everyone else watching it too. The tool you're using to find the hidden thing is the same thing erasing hidden on contact. The real hidden information doesn't come with the social proof that we often look for. It doesn't come with likes or satisfying thumbnail or 10 other comments confirming that it was worth it. It comes from someone with no audience telling you something once, and you having to decide whether to trust it without any of the social scaffolding you're used to leaning on. And I admit that's not a small ask. We've built entire systems that reward us for trusting the version with more validation attached. That's the whole basis of travel reviews and customer reviews. Trusting the version with none of that attached, just the person's word, is starting to feel like the harder, weirder choice, which tells you something about where we've ended up as a society and with the travel industry. So next time someone with no camera and no following tells you about a place, and there's no way to check it against 100 other posts first, notice how that feels. Notice the hesitation. That hesitation isn't a red flag. It's your natural safety instinct reacting to what actually new information feels like now, because we've gotten so used to information that's already been pre-approved by a crowd before it reaches us. Here's what I ask to sit with you the next time you're deciding between the place that everyone's posting and the place that one person mentioned once. Ask yourself which one you're choosing because of the place and which one you're choosing because of the proof. Then make your decision when booking the trip. I'm Chiara. This is Put the Guidebook Down. The guidebooks tell you where to go, but we're here for why you went. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.